guys, to another SpaceXplr episode. Today we have a very special episode. Again, for the people who have a passion about art and space, cosmos, this is going to be a great episode with a very great guest. And without longer further ado, Cathrin Machin. So she's a cosmic artist and science communicator. Through her artwork, Kat allows people to contemplate the biggest questions in the universe by connecting them with stars. Having become in the world's highest crowdfunding painter on Kickstarter, she has gone on to painting for some of the world's most influential people, including top Fortune 100 companies. And you have to go and check it out, her work. If you're looking to buy some, I'm sure there's a waiting list. You can do that too. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, go and check her work. I think we connected to Instagram, which you mainly can see all these great photos behind the scenes, what she's working on. She does a lot of traveling too, so you're going to see that probably as well. So Cathrin, again, really appreciate you coming on today on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. It's it's very interesting, again, because we had the first conversation kind of behind the scenes, a little bit more private, and you kind of told me your personal story, which I thought it was very fascinating, very interesting. So if you can take us back again to the time where you was before that, and how did you came across this passion, and just a little bit of a background.
I think as with most people, I started at a basic level of a passion of the stars when I was quite young. And, I had the glow-in-the-dark ceiling stars, did you? They were amazing. And, going in, my first moment was about 7 years old, seeing the moon with my dad. We were meant to be seeing the Perseid meteor showers, but I was in the UK at the time, and conditions were far from ideal, but we got to see the moon, and it was just phenomenal. And I remember being really captivated by it. But as with most things, I mean, we pick up a lot of interest when we're kids, and we sort of forget about them for a while, and, get into the drawl of everyday adult life, and, forget to cover those things that really excite us. And it wasn't really until I had a massive, I had a bit of a breakdown when I was at work, because I was really overworked. I studied engineering, but later went into the video games industry, and I ran video game studios. That's actually my real job, I suppose, is that I'm an executive producer for video game studios, and running massive teams, hundreds and hundreds of people across lots of different studios to make AAA video games. So that's where I come from. And it really wasn't until I had a point where I was just overworked. And I know everybody's had that. Well, most people have had a moment where they were just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was just very, very tired, working incredible hours. It's sort of 14 to 16 hour days. And,
wow.
And
okay.
it was a lot. 7 days a week for a couple months, and that was it. That was me done. I was burnt out, and I remember leaving the video games industry and just not knowing what to do with myself, because I knew at that point I'd already reached the top of the ladder, and I was like, I don't know what to do with myself, because all I knew was software development. And, I didn't know, I spent 10 years building my career. So, and I was very, very aware when I left that, I remember thinking I've wasted 10 years of my life, because of course I'd spent all this time building a career, and I couldn't go back into another part of it lower down, because I was overqualified for every role at that point, apart from the very top, and that was too stressful. And I watched a really good TED talk by a lady called Patty Dabrowski. Hopefully I've pronounced her name right. And it's called Draw Your Future. And I highly recommend, especially, anyone watching this around the beginning of a year and thinking about New Year's resolutions, because actually, strangely enough, painting space was a New Year's resolution that I made 5 years ago. Yeah. And it's gone horribly wrong. So it's my full-time job now. Yeah, I just love it. It's really, really great. And ah, what I had at that moment was a really big gift. And I say this on anyone I talk to is, having some sort of breakdown is fantastic. But you don't have to get to the point of a breakdown to decide to do what you really love, or follow your actual passions. Like, you can do it before you have one. But if you do, it's not a big deal. It's just a point in time where it's like you have to make a decision to stay where you're at and be unhappy, or to move forward and do something that you are happy with. And at the time, I had no expectations that space art would create any kind of livelihood. I hadn't anticipated that it would be a job. In my mind, up until maybe even 3 years into my career, I still thought that you couldn't be a success with art at all. Like, I just thought that art, and even now, sometimes, when someone says they're an artist, I sometimes roll my eyes a little bit like, oh. But, here's the thing. I was thinking about this the other day, like, what would be the world without art? And obviously I know I'm biased, but imagine being in a lockdown with no Netflix, with no music, wearing clothes with no designs, furniture that was simply pure utilitarian basicness. How boring and bland the world would be without pops of color. And actually, when we look around, everything that was invented and imagined and created, it was all part of some form of artwork. Certain cars could even be described as art. It's where art meets engineering. And it's sort of like, imagine the world without it. It would be horrible.
Well, I think we go into that direction because if we thinking about creating colonies on different planets, or just space flights in general, if you're gonna take a look at the movies, and we actually watched the movie, what was the name of that? I think I can remember because my wife, she's next to me as well. But that was a little bit scary movie, so we didn't finish watching the entire bit. But when you actually travel, you see these kind of camps, if we can call them, or spaceships. They're very boring, like pale, and So I think we kind of, yeah, Event Horizon. So we tried to watch that, with her. But I think with the space exploration in general, I think we're gonna head to that direction eventually. What do you think? Of being boring.
Oh, hopefully it's not boring. Hopefully it's really fantastic and beautiful and interesting. But I think, it's one of those foundational things. If you look at very early man, there are a few things that they did, and it was like dance, obviously, of course, the basics of like food, shelter, water, whatever, protection. But then once they got that covered, they were dancing, they were making artwork, they were making beautiful things. Like, it's as old as humans, I suppose. But it's weird because, often I think, what's the utilitarian purpose of artwork? And I did actually ask on Twitter, and most people said, I have a very, very stressful job, and I am enclosed by concrete walls and trapped in traffic jams, or, in the pandemic, not being able to leave. And it just transports me somewhere, and it reminds me that out there is a massive universe with galaxies, nebulae, and black holes ripping apart planets and stars. And it gives us a moment to not to forget where we're at, but to remember that we are part of something a bit bigger.
It's very interesting. I mean, the connection that we have with art is, as I mentioned, and there is definitely a different sort of art, and especially when it comes to the painting. Also, there is different varieties, which I want to ask you a question about that too. But we have that connection where we go into museums and we stare at the picture, and you see some of the people staring, like this for an hour, and they're looking for something. They're taking that picture apart and trying to understand the emotions, what's been involved in it. I mean, it's really like interesting relation, and it's only the picture. I mean, when we actually look at it from this kind of simple way, it's only a picture, but it tells a lot of story, right? So behind it. But personally, for you, I mean, why pick cosmos? Like, why pick space? Because as you know, like if you go into museums, you can find these. Some of the time interesting, some of the time not. I've seen some crazy paintings where there's a dot in the middle, and you try to kind of understand what it's all about. Well, I don't understand that type of art. but you can see some beautiful pieces, you know. So, but how did you came across cosmos in general? Why have you picked this specific kind of category?
Well, and I'm sure everyone listening would agree, but space is the best thing to look at. It's so
For sure.
beautiful. Like, I don't know. The reason why I'm so into space is, I've always had these questions about reality. Like, why does anything exist at all? Like, why
Hmm.
are,
Good question.
you know, even if people say like the Big Bang, or some people might think it's created by God or whatever it is, but like, why and where does it all come
Hmm.
from? And I think when you look at the stars, you ask these big questions about reality, like what is the and I don't mean just like why am I specifically here, or why are humans here, but like why is anything existing? Like,
Hmm.
if you, like, logically nothing should actually be here. The fact that anything exists is just mind-boggling. Like, where did
Yeah.
it start? Like, why, what is it all about? Like, when I think about it, I get like pretty existential. And I guess the way that I communicate that is really through painting it, because I'm just fascinated as well. Like, out there are like these nebulae that are like millions and millions of light years across, huge. Like, when you consider the size, and just,
Hmm.
it's mind-boggling that I mean, because I think it's one of those big questions that you go, oh well, it's not, I don't know, it's even now I'm just, yeah, it's something that I can't get let go of, so I just paint about it all the time.
That's good. That's a good solution. That's a definitely a good solution because I think again, the topic has been kind of we trying to pick it apart, you know, for a very long time, from probably for decades, you know, centuries now, and you know, with different astronomers and scientists getting involved. But there's so many unanswered, you know, questions, and probably we still don't know how to ask the questions in the right way, also, you know,
Right.
at the same time. But I mean, can you talk about your personal kind of creative process for the people who would like to paint something like that? They probably, some of those people will get inspired. They want to kind of give it a go, or for maybe advanced people, or just in general for the creative people. How do you get into this kind of zone? Is there a specific kind of routine that you go about to get in this kind of creative, you know, mind frame?
Yeah. um Oh man, just watch some space documentaries and off you go, really. I honestly, I think probably the first thing for anyone creating is to not worry so much about the final product. I know it sounds really strange, but often we can stop ourselves from taking on a new task or hobby or anything because we think we're going to be no good. But the truth is that everyone is terrible when they start. In fact, you have to be terrible when you start. Like, that's where you need to start at the beginning. So I think firstly, just being okay with just being a bit rubbish when you start, and just like, my thing is, like, honestly, I learned from YouTube. I learned from watching Bob Ross, different channels like Draw, Mix, Paint, and that kind of stuff. But I paint in oils, and that's what I think is, but it's not, it's a more a preference thing. Every different type of painting is a different style. And just get inspired by, like, looking at different NASA images or ESA images. Go watch some documentaries, get excited, see what other astrophotographers are taking, and yeah, just give it a go. I always start with a black canvas, and I paint it black with acrylic, and then I layer on like transparent oil color, because oil paint comes in like opaque and transparent, most people don't know. And then just start painting into it. Follow a tutorial from someone. I really like Lanchin. She does acrylic tutorials. If you're into acrylic, she's fantastic. But there's loads, like, honestly, everything I've ever done, I've learned from online. There's nothing that I've necessarily learned in a course or anything like that. I'm entirely self-taught from just stuff that I've seen online, and anyone can do it. That's the beauty of it. And just have a bit of fun with it. That's the most, your objective out of it really should be just two things: to learn something and to have a bit of fun. And hopefully, if you create something that's beautiful, that other people, it inspires other people, either to spend, like, for me, I just want to get space into people's homes. My problem is that you can go to galleries and exhibitions and whatever, and there's no space. I don't know why there's no space, because it's just so beautiful. and mesmerizing, and it's just incredible, and it is the foundation of the universe, and you just can't find it very rarely. You know, if you want to get something, you have to go on specialist websites and actually do a lot of Google searching. It's not something you can go out and in a store and find. So I feel like more people, the merrier, that get involved is just great. You know, we want more people doing this.
Exactly, indeed. So, I mean, there's probably there is a few paintings that we can point at that probably there are a little bit of famous of an artist that again, I'm not an artist, so please don't pick on me. But I'm sure there are where they painted, you know, a space or a cosmos. Again, it's probably was in a little bit different way. Probably there was some scenery, some people involved, and there was a sky, there was something. But again, you were just painting kind of nebula and galaxies. Again, the pictures that we see going behind you there. So it's a little bit different. But talking about getting into people's homes, as you mentioned, you got in actually very cool people, like you mentioned, top 100 Fortune companies. So can you give us a little bit of stories behind, you know, getting into these companies and what type of, you know, connections work? Like what type of companies are we talking about, first of all?
It's a challenge because I can't necessarily name specific people or companies,
Sure.
but
Okay.
certainly top executives at several different rocket companies.
Wow.
Some of which based in the US, in California, and that just, it's amazing. My brother actually kind of taught me how to he actually taught me how to draw when I was a little kid, and like it was real basic stuff. I'm talking like pencil sketches, but you know, we went through that whole phase of wanting to draw like mechanized robots and that kind of stuff. You know, we went through that phase, and he really loves you know, a particular space company based in California, but you can't actually just walk into those companies because you need that, you know, a lot of those are ITAR, so you need, you know, special government approval because they're working on military grade stuff. You know, and I was convinced, I was like, I'm going to do it. So the first year of you know, learning how to space paint, because I feel like I need to give some backstory onto this. The first year I started learning how to paint, you know, I didn't really expect it to go anywhere, as I said earlier. But one of my friends had suggested to make an exhibition, and I made the, you know, but at the time, you know, I was out of an executive high-paying job for a while. So I, you know, we ran a Kickstarter, which was massively successful. You know, we were aiming for $4,000 and it made 70, which is just blows my mind that, you know, that many people are interested in space art. And the next year we did one, you know, I thought, well, that one was really good. And that was my New Year's resolution, to start painting. My second one was to start painting big. Because year two, I was like, well, that New Year's resolution was fabulous. Let's do another one. But then I was like painting big, and I was like, I bought this massive canvas, and it was 4 meters by 2 meters tall, huge, or 13 foot by 7.5 foot if you're in feet and inches. And I was like, what am I going to do with it? And I remember a phone call from my brother. He was so upset because he'd gone to the US and was really, really excited about going into the factory and seeing the rockets being made. And obviously he couldn't go in because we're both British citizens, although I live in Australia. And I was like, how am I going to get him in? And I was like, I just made the connection. I was like, I have this massive canvas and there's this massive rocket company. Maybe I can paint something for them. And that's how we can, you know, and maybe we can get introduced that way. I wasn't necessarily expecting anything of it, but I thought I would just try. So I decided that I would, honestly, it's like probably the ballsiest thing I've ever done. Was I was like, I'll go just email them. I'll email someone at the very top and just be like, hey, I've got a canvas for you that I've painted. I'd love to drop it off. Nothing, you know, I didn't put any demands or any requests in, and I didn't have that email, so I had to guess their emails. Like I must have sent, I don't know, 50 emails or something.
Wow.
To, you know, different, like you know, different spellings, different layouts, because I was like, I wanted to get an email through, and I know that if you go to the front desk, they'll just fob you off. So I just tried that, and it worked. It was fabulous. And I got an email back, and it said, you know, wow, this is incredible. You know, we just need to figure out where to hang it. But me being me, I wasn't sure if I should paint this massive picture for this company, because it was a huge, it would be a 12-month undertaking at minimum to produce a painting this big. Actually, this painting here is the painting that it was behind me. It's NGC 3190, beautiful twisted galaxy. So what I did is I took a photograph and I photoshopped it onto canvas. And then I sent that as a preview image. But then obviously once I got the message back, I was like, wow, oh damn, I've now got to replicate this perfect detail image. And honestly, the first thing I did was I literally went to Google and was like, how do I mix paint? Because I'd painted before, I could mix a purple, but not the very specific shade of purple laid out in the very specific point on this canvas. And it was like a trial by fire, because now there was all this expectation. Yeah. And I was like, right, I'm just going to do it. And I rather naively just thought, right, I can do this. 2 feet, feet first. So we set a date for the drop off, which was about 12 months from that point. And we just made it happen. And I worked all the way through and I painted this picture. And it was started to dry on the palette. Whenever you mix paint, you have basically 3 or 4 colors, a bit of blue, a bit of red, a bit of yellow, whatever. And you balance them differently to give you the exact tone, shade, or whatever. Mm. But it takes about 15 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on how quick you are. Some people are very quick with it. But, this was such a massive canvas. I had to then paint, I had to mix like hundreds of different colors. And it was drying before I could get into painting the rest of it. So I thought, right, I will make an additive. I looked up additives to slow the dry time. I thought, that's great. I'll slow it down so I can basically paint the whole thing and then it can cure. But the problem is it never dried. And 6 weeks before we were due to fly out, it was still wet, like an oil slick. And I was like, wow, okay, I couldn't at this stage, because the canvas had to be specially made. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks to make the canvas. Firstly, you have to get the wood specially manufactured, you have to get it stretchered, it has to be shipped over in a massive furniture removal truck, then it has to be prepped and primed. The priming can take 5 days alone just to get the surface right. So I was like, there isn't time, I literally have to paint it. If I'm going to paint it, I can't let this one dry and then paint another one for them. I have to paint it on this particular canvas. So I got automotive thinners and I was scrubbing it down. It's crazy. And the worst part is, on that day, I found out my granddad had passed away. And I remember streaming with tears, but also high as a kite, because these thinners were so strong, scrubbing this painting down, because oil paint doesn't dry, it oxidizes. And in this case, it hadn't oxidized at all. So I could take it off, even though it was sort of a gummy consistency. And I painted the whole thing again in about the space of probably 2.5 weeks. I painted the whole thing again from scratch. And I remember we were taking it off the big frame. And because I was in a rush, because I had to literally get into a car that was waiting outside to get to the airport to fly. Because I had to fly to the UK for 2 weeks because my granddad had passed away. I was attending the funeral. So I was flying to the UK for 2 weeks where I wouldn't see the canvas. The canvas, of course, was flying to the US. So as we took it down, it sagged in the middle because it's incredibly heavy, this real big, thick Belgian linen, and it tore in the middle. And I was like, I don't have time to deal with it. I'm just going to have to deal with it when I get to the US. So when I got to the US, there was this little mark, which is where the paint had creased. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I remember before, I was going to paint a car floating in space, because this particular company had launched a car into space. And I didn't know where to put it. And I was like, I'll deal with that when I was in the US. And it just happens that it's in the perfect set spot, just in the middle, just at the bottom. And actually I painted the car over the top of it, and you can't tell at all. I even pointed it out directly, and they looked really close and was like, oh yeah, I can see that.
That is a cool story. That's a cool story.
Yeah, and I remember the day when I called my brother and was like, "You never guess where we're going," and he was like freaking out. It was phenomenal. It was so cool. And as a result, I painted for lots of the other executives too. So
yeah, but the amount of the determination, I mean, because it took for you, because that's a very big canvas we're talking about. I mean, you guys can see that on Instagram. I seen the photo. I think where you're standing next to it, so you can actually see the size of it comparing to the size of you. So it's pretty big, you know. So for you to do something like that again in 2.5 weeks, and you know, something quick and from scratch, again, I love the fact that you handled the story when it got ripped. Again, you just
here's
put it
here's it in progress.
Yeah.
Wow. It was mental, but you know what? Because I was like, there was no way I was going to allow myself to fail on this task. But like I think sometimes when you have to perform, you just have to do it. Don't even think about it, just go for it. And I remember I took a photo, and I was like lying on my back on the floor, like passed out, and you could just see the tips of my toes and the canvas. And I remember thinking to myself, I started space painting so I didn't have to go through crunch period, because it was so stressful when I was in games. Like, what am I doing to myself?
Yeah, but it was worth it. It was worth it, right? So.
Absolutely. The day I got to call my brother and say, guess where we're going, it was amazing. And they were so kind and so lovely. We got to drop it off and meet everyone there, and it was just the most incredible day. And it was just wonderful. As a result, I've met so many people. Actually, strangely, I met Ian, my partner, through a friend who worked at this company. And so it's strange. I always have this saying, opportunity dances with those on the dance floor. And I think sometimes when you put yourself out there and you go and do something, what happens is it opens doors that weren't there before. And it's amazing.
Exactly. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So we definitely painted a picture here with that story for us. And exactly, things will happen if you just, again, find what you love, again, find your passion, personal passion, because you probably could have been really successful as a executive back in a job, but probably it wasn't your personal passion, because I'm pretty sure you do, again, you mentioned you do a little bit of traveling and you paint a lot. So I'm sure you put in a lot of time and hours into that. But
right.
it doesn't hurt you that much because it's your personal passion and you just love everything about it. Again, for the people that are involved in it, companies, relationships that you're building with that as well. So it's just beautiful and it's a different thing. So, but do you have your kind of favorite? I know it's probably hard to answer, but do you have your favorite painting so far?
I think I'll just move it this one. So I drew a shot of the 2017 Great American Eclipse, originally shot by Sebastian Voltimer, who is a doctor of astrophotography. So he's bloody amazing anyway. But I took his image and I reimagined it and redrew it. And I think it's probably the one of the most insane. It actually strangely wasn't the hardest thing I've ever drawn. Actually, this with a shot to my right, which is this Milky Way with the cliffs and the water tumbling over.
And it's not a photo; it's a painting, right?
That's a drawing. Yeah, this is the stuff I'm doing these days. So yeah. I don't know. This is the thing. Every time I make a new one, I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever done. But yeah, it's and back to the point you said about personal passion, it makes all the difference. Having a purpose in life makes so much difference, and I really admire yours. And mine myself is helping people see the stars. And it's something you mentioned earlier in the podcast, is the fact that my passion is that because I want to, we're suffering from a massive amount of light pollution. People cannot see the stars anymore. And it's become so ordinary to not be able to see the stars. It's bananas, light pollution has only really been an issue probably the last 150 years, let's say. Before then, it was not an issue because, street lamps and stuff are actually relatively modern. I mean, actually, if you think about this in the grand history of things, I'm pretty sure like even like aeroplanes are only like 150 to 180 years old or so. Bear in mind, I'm not very good at history and dates, but it's very, very recent. There wasn't this light pollution. Right now, people forget that you're meant to be able to go outside and see the full Milky Way. You're meant to be able to see it with your own eyes. And the fact that you can't see it is just, I think, a massive travesty.
So what do you think? Because again, we spoke about that a little bit previous time, and again, I would love for you to share again your personal mission that you have about that, because exactly, I think a lot of people would love Cosmos a little bit more if they have an opportunity to see it in the first place. And again, there's a lot of technology, and your Ian knows about that because we had a conversation. There's a different episode, you can go and check it out. With Ian, where we talked about astrophotography in very high light polluted areas, because he's coming from California, so it's a very big light polluted area, and you can actually tackle these problems with different filters. And so the technology in there, in software, post editing, you can tackle and still get the views that you want. But in general, when you look up, you don't see, the Milky Way. You don't see the Andromeda. Exactly. You don't see the anything pretty much. Maybe the moon a little bit. So what do you again? Can you talk about your personal mission, because I think it's it's a really big one. So
yeah,
can you talk about how you're planning to tackle light pollution problems in the future?
Absolutely. So obviously, first off, our purpose in life is, or my purpose in life and my company's purpose is helping people see the stars. But what we're actually planning on doing is firstly getting space into people's homes. That's just the very base level things. But actually, primarily, all of these art sales are in order to go on to the next project. We're looking to raise a significant amount of capital because we are intending on lobbying governments to change the settings and the standards, international standards on light fittings. When we realize that actually if you change outdoor lighting, in particular the hoods that go around lights, you can really cut down light pollution by a massive amount. We're talking 30 to 50% light pollution reduction just with changing a little design on outdoor lighting. Of course, changing historical lights is going to be a challenge, but any lights that are being installed today should be designed that they don't cast light upwards, and that's what we really want to avoid. And it's something that is literally could be a literal few lines in international, like every country has its own standards. Australia has its Australian standards, the UK, Europe, everywhere has its own. But in order to do that, it takes obviously investment. So the first stage is creating artwork that we can get into people's homes. Lobbying government is an expensive thing to do, and changing standards is not straightforward. It takes a lot of policy changing and that kind of stuff. So that's like the end goal. The beginning stage is creating all this artwork, getting into people's houses and into people's homes, into people's hearts. I want to fill everyone's lives with space, because I think seeing images of space is really important to people. I know obviously I am biased, but it's sometimes a single image can really change the course of someone's life. And my brother in particular, when he was very young, he saw a picture of a vase in a magazine. I realize this is going to sound like a bit of a tangent, but it'll make sense in a minute. And it said underneath that it was computer generated, and it had all the caustics and light and beams and all that stuff. And he was just baffled, like, how could this single picture of a vase not be real? It was amazing to him. So amazing that he then went on and said, right, I have to learn how it's done. So, he downloaded the software, it was 3D Studio back in the day, learned how to, create shaders and texture map and render things. But that wasn't enough. You need to know how the shaders works and learn how to code the shaders, learn how, and then was like, that's not enough. He needs to understand like the root of the code. So then became, learn all this different technical development and coding for graphics and GPUs and that kind of stuff. Eventually became the chief technical officer now. 20 years on, he had this moment where he was like, 20 years on, he is now the chief technical officer at a very, very successful company. And he's now gone off on his own as well. And he makes virtual reality software that helps doctors save people's lives, right?
Wow.
By allowing them to train in a virtual environment, which normally they would have to do with actors and props and stuff. And obviously, you have to book it in and schedule it. It's very expensive. And you have to have someone there with makeup and actor and all these paid people. Now they can just put on a helmet and gloves and just go. That was one picture he saw, and that picture changed his life and actually probably saved the lives of millions of people. The person making that vase obviously had no idea that was what was going to be. But, I know for a fact that once you put lots of images of space, people are going to be, because that's the thing, right, with space, it lures you in with pretty pictures and then it hits you over the head with science. And really, that's what I'm after. I want people to be inspired. I myself, I'm not going to be the person that comes up with inventions and different scientific, discoveries or anything like that. But I might inspire the person that does do that. So yeah. So once we, it's great, isn't it? And also with Ian, with astrophotographers that do it, I just think it's fantastic. Anyone that's creating images of space, you have no idea what impact it could have on people. So once we've got images and artwork into people's homes, that's actually funding the production of our big sale project. So we're not just doing these smaller things. Any surplus funds go into building what we're currently making as a chandelier. But the interesting thing is it's of a Milky Way galaxy, and it just happens to be 8 meters or 26 feet in diameter. So a huge, gigantic thing, 3D printed in a crystal clear resin, lots and lots and lots of fiber optics, so very, very beautiful and sparkly, and using data from the Gaia space mission, which is incredibly exciting.
Can we get a sneak peek behind that project for now?
I wonder if I've got a picture of it. I will just see. I don't have one to hand, but yeah,
that would be amazing. I can just imagine the way it looks. Yeah, it
is stunning. And the idea is, one of my friends, I put this out there. What often I have, and I mean, we all do, we have these daydreams and we see something, and sometimes if it comes back to me over and over and over again, I know it has to be done. And this one is something I've been daydreaming of making for years now, like several years. I know it's got to be made. So the idea is that we are going to raise, it's going to be about $250,000 in materials and manufacturing to produce. But well worth it, because the idea is that we'll then donate it for free to a scientific organization or establishment. I don't know which one yet. We're still working that out. I just know I have to build it. And someone said, I thought this was really sweet. They said, every time you go into like a museum, it's always a natural history museum. It's always a big bloody dinosaur. And as much as I love dinosaurs, and they get the biggest one, of course, the entrance. But how much better would it be if they walked in and there was like, bam, this huge, gigantic Milky Way. So beautiful. Something that just I want people's breath to be knocked away, because I want people to really get curious and excited about space, because it's just, there's so much going on. And also, you could probably argue that the future of the human race really is, destined for the stars. We may have a global cataclysm. We're certainly running out of space. Of course, we've got to learn to look after planet Earth at home, but there's nothing like having an insurance policy now, is there?
Exactly. So yeah, we can talk about that a little bit, because I think it's very interesting. Again, in the times we're living, it feels like we're coming back to the kind of there is a similar feeling. Again, well, when I'm saying similar feeling, I never experienced the first time the feeling of a space race when when the United States and Russia was trying to kind of who's going to be the first on the moon, who's going to be the first in space in orbit, and it kind of, but I do imagine it probably felt something like this, because we now live in this time when everything, when space industries, private industries, because space is now opened up for the businesses. So everything is kind of speeding up right now, and it feels like it, which is a good sign. That means there will be more and more people and private companies and space agencies who hopefully will be doing some extra projects, which of course will involve some government's funding, a little bit, because I know the NASA just received $23 billion for this year funding, which is good news. So again, but with all this work, there again, as you mentioned, you want to put it in people's homes. So why, first of all, as I mentioned, for us as species, because like we live in a room, we have clothes, car, house, we have a job. It's kind of that's how we operate. We have friends, family. We travel to to Bermuda, to Mallorca, to relax a little bit. But why space in general? Why do you have to pay attention to that? And why is it important for the future?
I feel like really it's like this sense of awe and curiosity that drives the human race. It drives all religion because everyone's asking like, what's it all about? And it drives all science. Like all scientists are basically trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. And where better to look than the universe? There's so much we can learn, especially from different things like cosmology and stuff about the nature of reality. Of course, you could just go and have a mindless life of, just whatever you can find on Netflix and just go to work and do that on repeat until you die. But there's got to be something more out there, and there's got to be something more that, there's still to discover. And I think that this sense of adventure is found in space. It's that final frontier, isn't it? Space calls people for different reasons. For me, I find my spirituality in space in a way. I just think that it's so, like, I'm not religious, but I definitely think there's something very, very phenomenal about, just contemplating the universe. It fills me with tingles all over when I think about how bananas and massive it is, So there's that side of things. Some people are just fascinated by the actual scientific understanding, like trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe from a scientific and sort of more of a educational point of view. And there are people that are interested in it because, this is this idea of the forefront of exploration, and so many, video games and movies are all about just that sense of adventure and exploration. And I think that's just part of human nature. I think all of these are part of human nature in many ways. But also, I think we realize that everything has a shelf life. Life on Earth has a shelf life. And if we want to extend our shelf life, we're going to have to find new shelves to sit on. And I guess that's a start, right? We are doing a very good job at self-destruction as far as looking after the planet goes, but it's our, this concept of like the Earth ship. Yeah. It's like the Earth is a spaceship which carries all the people on it, and we're slowly destroying it.
We're monkeys. Like we don't know what we're doing. We're just hanging around, and we think we're smart, and we're building all the companies, or we're running. We are the CEO, we are vice president, we have all these statuses and things like that. But we're actually pretty stupid when it comes to us running this planet and making decisions. And again, like with the unlimited amount of capital that is available, because the government, the central banks, they can print as much money as they want. It's infinite number, because we created the currency on this planet, we people, right? And we are in control of it. So, but at the same time, we're talking about there's not enough funds for us to go and explore universe, which is a little bit, it's mind-boggling for me. It's like, how does that could be not one of the top priorities for us as people? Because as I mentioned, we need the B plan to make sure that we can actually leave at some point and live on other planets.
Right. Even down to things like global cataclysms, the idea of, asteroids even hitting us, You know, we can't see. Like, there's the thing about, you know, rocks in space and in space situational awareness is that you can't see this stuff because most of it doesn't emit light. You can only see the moon because it's reflecting the sun. But what if the sun wasn't there? You know, so there is a lot of stuff that's hurtling around. We've got, I mean, and certainly like the amount of space junk and debris, which is another story altogether. But, you know, as far as things that could really endanger life, you know, and it's not unheard of for massive meteors. I mean, we're talking the size of countries sometimes that could smash into Earth and destroy everything. I don't want to panic everyone, but it's something to think about, you know. And I think, I mean, it's kind of an exciting adventure too, right? The idea of going to another planet and setting up a base there is just, I mean, it's phenomenal. And even if we think, well, we should really focus on issues within Earth, I actually think that it's the technology that we develop to do these feats and endeavors that comes back to benefit life on Earth. You know, a lot of technologies around desalination of water. You know, water shortages are massive and issues in the world. A lot of that was developed in space. You know, a lot of these advanced computing and technology, you know, information passing technologies, you know, satellite, like how could anyone get around these days without GPS? And that's definitely totally impossible without space, you know, exploration. You know, all of these things we benefit from, like microwave ovens and you know, different radio imaging for, you know, hospital stuff. The stuff that we benefit from, we take for granted, all came from the space race, really. Space race and war. But look, let's be honest, no one really wants another war. So let's just focus on space.
For sure, that's for sure. I agree with you on that one. I'm on the same page with you on that one for sure. But I think you know, the technology is probably not the biggest piece that we're missing, because I had again multiple conversations with people who are involved in different projects, let's say space medicine or space engineers, and when we have those conversations and those discussions, we somehow come back to the point of us being monkeys. You know, like, because we cannot handle the thought of it, probably for now, at least when it comes to the universe and having, because we have this kind of planetary thinking, we have the thinking that we have right now here on the planet. But for us to evolve this species, we have to have this kind of probably universal thinking, which is either requires for us to break the pattern that we currently have or get some sort of a, you know, third party input that will kind of have this breakthrough moment in our society, because we for now we kind of boiling in our personal juices, because the information that we gathered throughout these centuries, I mean, the books, the knowledge, the number, everything that we have, we just kind of, you know, passing on, and the information is getting more and more distorted through the time, you know, because of the social media, everything. So like, what do you see when it comes to us living on different planets? Because it sounds very promising, but do you see that happening 20, 40 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? What do you personally think?
Well, I don't think it's that far. If you think about airplanes are only like 100 and something years old, you know, which, could you imagine a world without airplanes? You know, so it can't be that far off, really. I mean, the fact that we have regular rocket launches now that you could literally watch on your phone whilst sitting on a toilet on a train in a foreign country, and it can be broadcast, you know, like the idea that it's so normal now to watch that stuff. You know, sometimes I just wake up and have a bowl of cereal and watch a rocket launch. You know, if you told that to someone 50 years ago, they, you know, it would be that just normal. They'd be like, that's crazy, right? Yeah. You know, I remember those it's like, is it Moore's law? You know, the increase in technology. You know, there was a time when they thought, wow, you know, at some point everyone will have a computer, and that they were like, that's crazy talk. Now we've got like a computer strapped to our wrist, and like several computer in our phone, and our car's a computer, and then we work on computer. Like everybody's got 5 computers, you know. So it's not that far off. And you know, and also, you know, we have amazing minds working on it as well. But you know, back to one of your points earlier about the idea that, you know, humans are kind of just you know, monkeys just sort of stewing in their own juices. I think part of the issue is that we can be quite myopic as a culture. and we just look about what the direct issue is in front of us. The direct issue might just be, you know, for some company, it might be my, you know, my board of advisors, you know, my stock buyers, you know, need to have a good return, and we've got this issue. You know, they don't think about the fact that, wow, we're on this gigantic planet, and it's our only one, and it's fragile, and we are hurtling through space, and out there is all this stuff going on. We're just very, very like focused in on this tiny minutia. And I think that actually this cosmic perspective is very beneficial. When you look at things in the cosmic perspective, like what we're actually doing and why we're doing it, you know, you can see certain people who focus on this exclusively, how far they've managed to progress themselves. So yeah, it's an interesting, I think that's why like I like making space art, because it just does remind us that we aren't just in this tiny world, we're in this massive universe.
Just a pale blue dot, right? Just a pale blue
Yeah.
dot. Yeah, so exactly, but you know, it's again, the technology is definitely there, but we, you know, because our bodies just have to adapt. So it's like it's the conversation, the entire conversation when I start talking with somebody about cosmos and space exploration is just infinite. I mean, you can talk about it for hours because there is so much more that we have to discover. But I love the fact of, first of all, inspiring people, because that's how, again, as you mentioned, the planes, that's how the great things got created in life, where you just inspire one person at a time, and maybe you're kind of working on some project and you left it off and somebody else picked it up and kind of took it from there. And, you know, of course it will involve just like general evolution has to be there some time of the years. But again, the technology, having, you know, machine learning, AI-based technology, that would probably help us and benefit us to make better, greater decisions, to make those decisions faster. And, you know, so like I love where we are in place when it comes to having this kind of symbiotic relationship with technology at the same time. So that's good. So you mentioned, you know, again, about something being out there, because I love the question. So I would like to get your personal thought and view on that. As you know, the famous kind of Drake equation, you know, something being out there, that just looking at the number of galaxies and, you know, planets, exoplanets being there, it should be something out there. So what do you personally think, looking at these documentaries, if you can call them documentaries, movies, everything they created about the extraterrestrial life, what do you personally think? Is there something out there?
Oh, absolutely. But I think what people forget is how massive the universe is. You know, if this, you know, if you had a dinner plate, and that represented the Milky Way, for instance, so our galaxy, you know, probably a small, I don't know what that would be in local currency, but like a cent, or, you know, 5 pence piece, or whatever it is for your local currency, that's about as far as our radio emissions. So, you know, if we're thinking about from the First World War, when we were like sending out radio emissions, you know, into space, and obviously they travel at the speed of light, that's how far we've reached. We've not we've not even reached the width, we've not even reached the height and the depth of the Milky Way, let alone the width, and of those things that have been traveling all that time. You know, space is so massive that, you know, when we look at light from galaxies, you know, it's been traveling for thousands and thousands of years. Some of those particles sent out before you were even born, and they just happen to terminate their lives, you know, those photons on the back of your eyes as you look at those stars. Those stars may not necessarily be there. We don't know that. It's really looking back in time. You know, some of those stars, you know, they emitted their particles, you know, before the formation of the Earth sometimes. So I think whilst, yeah, there's stuff there, I'm certain of it myself. The question is whether it's here, and I highly doubt that. You know, this whole, I mean, just our solar system is massive. You know, just our planet is massive, to be honest. But then the solar system is massive. The galaxy, the neighboring clusters, these distances are insurmountable. So if there is stuff out there, the chances of it ever getting in touch, you know, in this very slither of time, you know, even now when we think about the whole of evolution of plants and stuff, you know, and animals and algae, and then single cell creatures and so on. You know, and you have this massive timeline. If you put it on a clock, and it's basically humans pop up in the last few seconds, you know. So, you know, and of the technology, it's like, you know, the milliseconds at the end where we've been sending anything that's, you know, recordable. And so it's like the slither of opportunity in which you can catch another intelligent species is very slim, you know, just because of the massive amount of time. There is unique things about the Milky Way that, or more specifically our solar system, that aren't as common. Whilst it's very common, we know that now, that there are lots of planets around, you know, orbiting stars, you know, in potentially habitable zones. But the most important thing is that, you know, the order and such needs to be consistent for a large period of time so that life can develop. We're very lucky. We've got these supergiants, Saturn and Jupiter, and then the sun, and in between them, they sort of hold almost like a tightrope, or like a clothesline, like holding everything taut in a way where it doesn't, you know. But, you know, having you know, standard orbits isn't that common. You know, lots of orbits interchange, you know, therefore you'll get hot periods, freezing cold periods, you'll have impacts and all of this kind of stuff. So, you know, having these like long periods of time where you've got you know, consistent planetary setup that allows life to, you know, so that's actually not as common as, you know, we are very lucky. So even if there are lots of planets, they're often mixing up and stuff. So I don't know, I think the life is out there, but I think it is very far apart. It may even be beyond our visual, you know, we see the edge of the universe, but it's actually not, it's the edge of the visual universe. It may be beyond that, you know. But this place is massive, and I think it's terrifying, the idea that nothing else is here. But space. Yeah, just like, yeah, it's a big place.
So hopefully there is something out there. What do you think about possibility? Because again, I watched this podcast not that long ago, probably a month ago, where these two people, it is quite kind of, you know, big podcast on YouTube and social media, and they had this discussion. So one of the people kind of told the story of having, you know, as these kind of psychedelic trips. And one of the people were talking about basically having that trip and kind of explaining the way everything took off from there. So explain that, you know, that person kind of met some sort of a human being-like creature and kind of had this discussion, which at the time where he was still, you know, in the entire kind of effect, so he understood what the creature was saying. So once he came back from that experience, he couldn't explain basically what the creature said, because he said it's really difficult to explain, because as far as he tried to explain that the words or whatever the language or something that he used is not used here on our planet. And you know, he basically proposed that it could be you know, an option that, again, through having these kind of psychedelic experiences, that we're kind of actually accessing you know, our brain and actually accessing the universe. Which, if we look at from the kind of, you know, brain cell perspective, if you ever seen the brain cell, you can kind of Google that. You're gonna see all these kind of networks, and it looks very much the same as the universe if you're gonna look at it from 100 billion years apart. When you see all these galaxies kind of, you know, put in together. So, and what do you think about, you know, option of you know, having these conversations with these creatures, and actually these creatures could be in different dimension? Because as we think about you know, UFOs, most of the time we think about spacecraft, the green little man, they come down to, what about, you know, something that we can actually touch and see? What about these creatures existing in a different dimension?
Right. Okay. So I love, obviously, I do a lot of psychedelic exploring myself, and it was part of, you know, how I reimagined what I wanted to do. And the beauty of psychedelic trips, in particular, things that involve, you know, LSD or acid or any of those things. Of course, by the way, guys, most of places this is entirely illegal. So, make sure if you're doing it, it's in a place that is legal and it's safe to do so. But it hyperconnects the brain and allows parts of the brain to discuss with other parts of the brain. And, the chances of them actually talking to, because, I've had out of body experiences where I felt like I was on another planet and having these things. But, I don't necessarily believe that is actually me out of actual body. I just feel like it's my mind is gone to a place in the same way that a dream world would be. But I think there is a lot to be said for the sense of imagination and creativity that it allows us to have and where it can take us from there. And as this idea of, aliens being here, there's this beautiful theory called Panspermia, which is, where rocks and lots of planets, share rocks all the time. We have moon rocks landing on Earth, for instance, and so on. It happens frequently, and some of those contain bacteria or some sort of organic material. And this concept of panspermia is that actually life was seeded on Earth from bacterial or some sort of single cell organisms that were carried here in meteorites. So maybe we are the aliens we're looking for. Which I think is a beautiful concept. As far as intelligence, that sort of stuff, I am massively fascinated by it. I love the concept of it, but I just haven't seen any actual evidence of it. Now, the argument of whether we would ever see evidence of it, even if it was found, would any government ever release it? Good question. But my belief is the universe is just so big that if there is something out there, the chances of it being here is slim to none. More likely, if life was seeded, it was seeded from these single cell organisms. And as far as psychedelic trips, I think that it's amazing because, it allows it hyperconnects your brain. It allows part of your brains to talk to other parts of your brain and allows you to resolve very, very complex questions and that kind of stuff. But also it makes you see a lot of stuff, and, lots of patterns and stuff that aren't actually there in reality. The thing that I found particularly interesting though is that the sort of patterns that I see are similar to patterns that other people see when they're in these states. And I just find it fascinating that if something isn't real, but everyone sees it. But, it might just be the way that the elements, combine with different sensors and receptors and so on. But yeah, I don't read too much into it myself. But, it is an exciting idea. I just don't necessarily believe it's reality, I suppose.
Got it. No, I do understand. Yeah, so it's definitely worth exploring ourselves also, because we still, once we exploring the universe and the vast of it, we still don't know a lot about ourselves personally, the way that our psychology works, the unconscious, and the way our bodies react to a certain thing. So there's a lot to be discovered when it comes to our personal mind and the way it works. So definitely that. But what would you say for the people, again, who are coming to this podcast kind of the first time, they never seen any type of, crazy, interview with all these cosmic backgrounds that you see here, popping up. So what would you tell them, again, the ways that they can go and educate themselves and start to kind of acquire this universal thinking?
Firstly, just get really curious. My advice always, firstly, there are massive amounts of documentaries and things that you can see online for free on YouTube. Honestly, highly recommend it. But if you are curious, go out to a dark sky site if you can. There are light pollution maps that you can see online, and it'll tell you how bad the light pollution is in any area. Now, of course, if you're in a stay-at-home order area, you're in quarantine or in lockdown, of course, for this period of time, don't do that. But when it is safe to do so, go out with a friend, go out somewhere where it's very, very dark and just experience the night sky. If you can't do that, start with what's close. Start with the moon. You can see it wherever you are. it doesn't really matter how light polluted things are. You can always see it. Sometimes you can pick up a cheap pair of binoculars. I always say binoculars are a great way to start visual astronomy, and have a look. There are massive amounts of apps as well that you can see, that you have on your phone, that I think are really helpful, because I think to really start to get into it, firstly, you've got to familiarize yourself with the night sky, learn where the different constellations are, learn where the different stars are, learn where the planets are. Like, here's the thing, when you're in a city, most of the things that you think are stars aren't stars, they're actually planets. And the word planet is a beautiful word. It's an ancient word meaning wanderer, because they believe that they were wandering stars, because the stars stay the same every night pretty much. Obviously they, as we rotate, they rotate out, and there are different things like precession of the equinox and all of that stuff we won't get into. But in night to night, pretty much the stars look the same, but the planets move around, and they move quite a bit sometimes. Right now, actually, there's a conjunction between 3 different planets going on that you can see, and it happens all the time. So familiarize yourself, get, I think Star Walk, and there's all these different ones. There's loads of free ones. You can hold your phone up and it will show you exactly what you're looking at, and start to learn the names and start to learn their places. Get into, using binoculars, get excited about it, because honestly, it is phenomenal. I know a lot of people really built their excitement through watching the Cosmos series in particular. Online. I highly recommend it, guys. You can't not watch certain things like that and not be so in awe of the beauty of the universe. Yeah. And of course, definitely listen to lots of spaceexplr podcasts too.
There you go. So again, definitely agree with you. If the cosmos doesn't excite you, we're in deep trouble right there, So that's kind of the end of it right there. So, but again, for you personally, having all these different projects that you're working on, again, we're going to be waiting for an update on a chandelier, because like personally, I would love to see that. I can kind of picture it, but it's different in my head than it's probably in reality. And just love to see the share of it and the amount of work that will go into it. So we're definitely pulling for that. Again, your personal work, it's amazing, it's phenomenal. People can actually see that, and of course we're going to upload all the social media so we can go and take a look at it. And it's very, very amazing. It's beautiful. I don't see a lot of people doing that. So, and it's very important. So I love that you're spreading your personal message about that. And the third thing, that you're looking to tackle the light pollution problem, which is a really big problem that we have. And again, with this technology, and it seems like we're having more and more of that. And with that means there is more light. And tackling that problem and helping people to see the sky is a beautiful thing as well. So besides all of that, what will be kind of your own personal legacy that you will looking to leave behind you?
Look, I would like to leave the world behind with less light pollution. Like, honestly, that's literally what I'm here to do. I missed the step, but once we've made the chandelier, we're building 2, of course. One we'll give away and one we'll sell, and then the proceeds will then go to towards helping us lobby government and so on. And there's lots of different other projects. But I want, here's the thing, right? People will live, or will be born, they'll live and they'll die, and they've never seen the stars at night. And that is just the biggest travesty I can even imagine. I was out in Uluru and shooting, and it's a story I tell often. I was out at Uluru, this big sacred monolithic rock in the middle of Australia, sacred to the indigenous Aboriginal people. And there was this thing where we'd sit around and we called dining under the stars, and I was shooting I was out in one of the darkest skies in the world. I had my camera up shooting long exposures whilst I was having dinner, and at some point they turn all the lights off from the dinner, and then you just get to see the whole beauty, and it's so many stars. Like, it makes people gasp how many. It's so sparkling and so bright. And this guy came up to me and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, what is that?" And he was pointing at the Milky Way. He was, I would say, in his late 70s, a guy from the USA. And he'd never seen the Milky Way. never. And I was like, oh, of course, that Milky Way, that's our home. That's part of our address. As much as our street or our suburb or our town or our country or our planet, that Milky Way is part of our address. It's home. That's our home sweet home, right there. When we look at it in pictures, we see this big strip of light, but it's not just a strip of light. That's a bloody galaxy edge on. It's actually a circle, which is phenomenal, right? It's an actual whole galaxy really close to us. We can see it as a strip, and he'd never seen it before. And you're meant to be able to see it with your eyes. And if you can't see it with your eyes, you're living in extreme light pollution, which incidentally, 99% of people in Europe and North America and 83% globally are living in light pollution, which is insane if you think about it. So this guy had never seen it, but it occurred to me that this is a guy that was like, in his late 70s, arguably at the beginning of his life when he was younger, light pollution wasn't as bad as it was today. But then I realized that's actually the destiny of so many people being born today. Our children, or our children's children certainly, are going to live having never seen the stars. They will never see them. Never. It will never be an opportunity. There will not be a single inch on Earth that is not affected. And I just think that is so heartbreaking. Like, how can we allow this to be this? The stars are, how I said, I like to sit under them and I think about, the meaning of life and the universe and stuff. But that's something humans have done for a long time. It's not just me. You think about all ancient civilizations, how drawn they were to talking about the stars, because for them it was the way that they navigated. It's the way that they ran their lives, like the way that they told what season it was. That they thought the gods came from them, because they're so immense and beautiful, we've always been sitting under the stars telling stories about where we come from and what life means, and it's only recently we've lost it. So that's what I'm doing this for, and I just want our kids to grow up and be able to see them when they go outside. And I said this elsewhere, but it's a little bit like being a goldfish, right? You don't know you're in water because it's always there, right? If you're in a bowl, like, you don't realize it's there. And light pollution's a bit like that. It's so normalized that we forget that we are living under a shroud of light pollution. It's always there, and it's only when we go out we go, oh wow, you're meant to be able to see these. So if I can leave anything, I would just like to leave some clarity in the night skies, that people can enjoy the stars. Not just through telescopes. Of course, we have technology that'll help that, but with our own eyes.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a painful truth, having this kind of light pollution problem again, but it's not a fact, because it could be fixed. And of course, like, if we, myself or the community, if we can help you to add some value when it comes to solving that problem, because it's not your problem. You want to, again, what you do from your own personal kind of passion and view that you have on the world and on the universe. So I love that, because again, one person is looking. Of course, there will be groups of people who will be working with that project, because it's a very big project. But everybody should be involved in this, and I definitely recommend everybody who is watching, if you share this episode with your friends, just pass them along and let them know that Cathrin can, help you to see the stars right now, probably through these amazing photos for now, at least, if you get those in your home, and then you can actually in the future see that by yourself when you're gonna go, outside in your city, in a city jungle, and you probably will be able to see that, at night as well. So, it's great. Like, I love your personal passion and, the things that you do. I mean, you found the things that you want to do, which is very important, and you're working on things that are, bigger than us, and I think that's what makes life exciting, when we focus on something bigger than us, so it's a great message and a great cause. So guys, as I said, if you pass this episode along to your friends and just let them know, look, you can add value, you can be part of the space projects, again, especially when it comes to light pollution. So if you know somebody, anybody maybe works in a government, maybe it's your cousin, maybe our uncle, you want to put some forces together and make sure that we can tackle that problem, please do that. Send them this episode and inspire them. I'm sure that person will go and check it out, Cathrin's work, and will get the same probably impression as this guy got, that you sent the 50 emails plus, and he will be inspired for sure. So we need more people to get inspired about the cosmos. So if you send this episode, that would be awesome. And again, Cathrin is just, big thank you again for coming over today and sharing your personal passion and reasons why people should look at the skies a little bit more. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So again, guys, thanks for watching this episode. And as always, I'll see you next time. And until then, don't forget to keep exploring.